Welcome back to the deep dive. Pull up a chair, um, get comfortable, maybe dim the lights a little bit.
Yeah, we're definitely going for a slightly different vibe today.
We really are. Imagine, if you will, sitting around a campfire.
The wood is crackling.
Right, the shadows are dancing against the trees, and you are settling in to tell ghost stories.
But here's the twist. The ghost in this story isn't actually trying to scare you.
Well, not exactly. He is actually a philosopher.
And a comedian.
And arguably a better psychologist than most people with PhDs.
It is a really unique atmosphere we are stepping into today. We are looking at a specific moment in time where the veil between the physical and the non-physical gets incredibly thin and, frankly, a little bit weird.
A little weird.
Okay?
I mean, that is an understatement. We are talking about a session where we have a frightening monster that turns out to be a house cat.
Right.
A woman holding a glass of wine while in a deep trance without spilling a single drop.
That part is amazing.
And a voice experiment that is honestly the stuff of sci-fi nightmares. But before we get to the spooky stuff, we need to orient ourselves. What exactly are we looking at today?
So we are looking at source material from the Seth Material.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, this is session 395 from the early sessions, book 8.
Okay.
This session was recorded on February 26, 1968. And it is important to note, for those following the archival trail, that this material comes to us from the New Awareness Network.
Right. And just to be totally clear up front, this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, to explore, and to maybe get our minds blown just a little bit.
Definitely.
But tell me why this session, I mean, there are hundreds of Seth sessions out there. What makes 395 the one we really need to unpack?
Because it is a master class in mechanics. Usually Seth talks about philosophy, the nature of reality. You create your own reality, that sort of thing.
Right, the high-level concepts.
Exactly. But in session 395, he pops the hood. We aren't just looking at general philosophy here. We are looking at the actual mechanics of trance itself. We're looking at the nature of creativity. And perhaps most interestingly, we are getting a rare glimpse into how a non-physical entity actually perceives us humans.
That part really stuck with me, the idea of being seen by something that doesn't use physical eyes.
It's trippy.
It really is. But let's start with the human element first. The context of this session is super relatable for anyone who has ever tried to create something and failed. Because Jane Roberts, the medium, she wasn't having a great week, was she?
No, she was not. It is the classic artist struggle. At this point in 1968, Jane Roberts, who is the medium for Seth and refers to herself as Ruburt in the sessions, had just finished a manuscript. She called it her dream book.
She poured her heart into it.
She did. She really did. And she sent it off to Doubleday, a major publisher. And just before this session took place, she got the rejection letter.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Doubleday said no.
Ouch. I think we have all been there. You work on something, you think it's the one, and then the world just says no.
It is crushing.
Usually that is the part where you crawl into bed and eat ice cream for 3 days. But Seth, he doesn't exactly offer a shoulder to cry on, does he?
Not in the traditional sense, no. See, Seth's take on this rejection is fascinating. He basically says, good, this needed to happen.
Wait, hold on. Good. His medium is devastated, her professional work is rejected, and his response is that this is a good thing. That sounds a bit cold.
It does.
Or at least incredibly arrogant.
It sounds that way on the surface, but look at the reasoning. He explains why. He says that this rejection was a catalyst. Because of that, no, Jane immediately sparked a new idea for a different book, a better book.
Okay, I see.
Seth points out that Jane, or Ruburt, regarded this new idea as a massive breakthrough in her habits and thinking.
So it is not schadenfreude. It is strategic. The failure was necessary to clear the path for the real success.
Precisely. Seth makes this really profound statement. He says you will always find that Rupert's writings are precise barometers, giving excellent indications as to his inner state of mind.
Wow.
He is saying that your creative output isn't just a product. It is a diagnostic tool for your psyche.
That is a heavy concept. It means if your work is blocked or if it is getting rejected, it is not just about the market or the quality of the writing. It is a mirror of your internal state.
Yes.
But Seth gets even more specific, doesn't he? He starts analyzing Jane's writing style, comparing her poetry to her nonfiction. And this is where he identifies a cleavage or a split in her personality.
This is the core of the psychological analysis in this session. Seth points out that for a long time there was a war going on inside Jane. On one side you had her poetry. Seth says the poetry represented acceptance and intuition.
Meaning, when she wrote poems, she was open.
Right. She was believing, flowing, unrestricted.
Okay, so poetry is the believer side, the side that allows the magic in.
Exactly. But then you have her nonfiction, her prose. Seth says this represented her intellect and her beliefs. And interestingly, her intellect was often skeptical.
Skeptical of her own experiences.
Yes, it was hedging. It was dealing with ideas it didn't fully accept yet.
So she is channeling this incredible spiritual material by night, writing intuitive poetry on the side, but her serious nonfiction writing was still trying to play it safe.
That is exactly it. She was fighting herself. The intellect and the emotions were not operating together. Seth says this caused a drag on her energy.
A drag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about a car where you have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. You might be moving, but you are burning out the engine and using way too much fuel.
That explains the exhaustion. If you spend half your energy fighting your own intuition, you have nothing left for the actual work.
And Seth is saying this new book idea, the one she got after the rejection, represented a reconciliation. The new book was a marriage of these two sides.
I love that.
The intellect finally learned from the intuition. It wasn't conquered. Seth is very careful to say the intellect wasn't conquered, but freed.
That is such an important distinction. It is not about shutting off your brain to be spiritual. It is about freeing your brain to work with your intuition. It is integration.
And the result of that integration is massive energy. Seth says the strong energy that was being diverted was working to his disadvantage, and that she should now begin to feel almost immediately the addition of this reclaimed energy.
Reclaimed energy. But there was a physical side to this too, wasn't there? It wasn't just mental. I remember reading something about her health in the notes.
Yes, and this is where the medical intuitive side of Seth really comes out. He explicitly links Jane's physical symptoms to this creative battle.
How so?
He calls her body a physical battlefield that paralleled the intellectual battlefield of the dream book.
So her physical health issues were basically the somatic acting out of this conflict between her skepticism and her intuition.
That is Seth's diagnosis. He says the inner difficulties were being worked out in several areas at once. So the victory of the new book idea wasn't just about getting published. It was a sign of victory for her physical health as well.
Because the energy was freed up.
Exactly. The energy that was being used to create symptoms is now free to be used for creativity.
It really forces you to ask yourself, what conflicts am I holding on to and where are they showing up in my body? We tend to think of writer's block as a mental thing and getting a cold as a physical thing, but Seth is drawing a straight line between them.
It highlights how interconnected we are. Body, mind, spirit, it is all one system. But speaking of interconnectedness, let's shift gears a bit. We have talked about Jane's internal state. Now let's talk about the external setting of this session.
Yes, the room itself.
Because we have a guest in the room, and Seth seems to be in a very playful mood.
We do. Peggy Gallagher is witnessing the session, and Seth, in his infinite wisdom, decides to give her a nickname immediately.
Our cat lover.
I love that. It immediately breaks this scary ghost stereotype. He is observant. He knows she loves cats. But then he makes a joke about the actual cat in the room, Willie.
This is the humorous segment.
Yeah.
Seth looks, or rather uses Jane's eyes to look at Willie the cat, and he calls him a frightening monster.
A frightening monster, a house cat. Is he being sarcastic?
Oh, absolutely. He suggests that to save Peggy from undue torment and inner terror, they should put the monster behind a closed door.
That is such a dry, sarcastic sense of humor. I can just hear the deadpan delivery. But it also serves a function, doesn't it? It is not just a joke.
It is entirely disarming. Rob, Jane's husband, actually gets up and puts the cat in the bathroom while Peggy laughs. But it establishes that Seth isn't a robotic entity.
Right. He is a person. Well, a personality.
Yes, he has personality. He can read the room. He can make a joke. It puts everyone at ease before the heavy stuff starts.
And the heavy stuff definitely starts, because right after the cat incident, Rob, that is Joseph, asks a really trippy question. He asks Seth, when Jane's eyes are open, what do you actually see?
This is one of the most revealing moments in the session regarding non-physical perception. Rob wants to know if Seth sees the room like we do. You know, chairs, tables, people.
Which is a fair question. If he is borrowing Jane's eyes, shouldn't he see what she sees?
You would think so, but Seth says essentially, not really. He says, I'm aware of you myself as electromagnetic and psychic entities.
Electromagnetic entities.
That sounds more like physics than spirituality. What does he mean by that?
That is his primary view. He sees the essence of the personality. He says he sees us in all our past and present existences.
Wow.
So when he looks at you, he doesn't just see you sitting in a chair in 1968. He sees the whole you, the multidimensional history of your soul.
That is mind-bending. It is like he is seeing the timeline of a person all at once, like looking at a film reel spread out on a table rather than watching the movie frame by frame.
That is a great way to put it. He says that seeing us as physical, three-dimensional forms is a second-handed experience for him. It is not his native way of seeing.
He uses an analogy about focus, doesn't he? He does. He explains that he can see the physical world, but he has to use Jane's nervous system to do it. It is like putting on a pair of binoculars or VR goggles.
Oh, he is dialing in.
Right. He has to narrow his focus down to our level to see the physical table or the physical face.
So to Seth, the real us is this electromagnetic pattern, and the physical body is just a temporary costume we're wearing that he has to squint to see.
That is the implication. It reverses our entire worldview. We think the physical is real and the spirit is ghostly. To him, the spirit is the solid reality, and the physical is the ghostly, fuzzy overlay.
I see the essence of your personality. That is a quote to hang on your wall. But he doesn't stop at just telling us how he sees. He decides to show us how he interacts.
Yes, the demonstrations.
This is where we get into the spooky science part of the session, because Seth demonstrates 3 distinct methods of trance communication in a single evening.
This is what makes session 395 so historic. Seth decides to show off a little bit. It is like a variety show of channeling.
Let's walk through these methods. Method number 1. This is what we are calling the Paramount Hotel effect, or the casual overlay. What does this look like?
In this state, Jane speaks in a pleasant, almost normal voice. Rob describes it as lilting. She retains her own mannerisms.
So she still looks like Jane.
Completely. She smiles like Jane.
Yeah.
She gestures like Jane. If you walked in, you might not even know she was in a trance.
It is like he is the prompter in the theater and she's the actor on stage, but he is whispering the lines directly into her brain.
A very good analogy. Seth says in this state, he is closely allied, but just beneath the surface. He is allowing Jane's personality to remain the dominant surface layer. But the proof of control here is the wine glass.
The wine glass, this is the detail that convinces me.
Joan is holding a half-full glass of wine in her right hand throughout this entire section. She is gesturing, she is talking, she's in the deep trance, and she doesn't spill a single drop.
That is incredible motor control. Usually when you think of trance, you think of someone slumping over or jerking around. This is hyper-controlled.
And here is the kicker. The phone rings.
No way, in the middle of the session.
In the middle of the trance, 10 p.m., the phone rings. Now, normally, snapping someone out of a deep trance with a loud noise is jarring. It can be physically painful for the medium.
Right, it is a shock to the system.
But here, Jane or Seth just pauses. She waits. Rob answers the phone. It is friend calling from Fredonia. Rob chats for 10 minutes. Jane sits there in trance holding the wine. Rob hangs up. Jane resumes exactly where they left off.
That is absolute composure. It really highlights the utility of this method. Seth says this method is great for public places, right?
Yes. He says he can communicate without freaking people out. He can be present in a coffee shop or a party and provide information without the dramatic spectacle. It is the incognito mode of channeling.
Incognito mode. I like that. But then things change. This is where we get to method number 2. And honestly, reading the transcript, this part gave me chills.
It is the deep transposition. The vibe shifts completely. Jane takes off her glasses. That is the first sign. Then her head drops all the way down to her chest. Rob notes that her breathing becomes loud and labored, which is very rare for her.
And the voice changes.
Drastically. It stops being the lilting Jane voice. It stops being the strong Seth voice. Rob describes it as muffled, deep, resonant. He calls it an old man's voice.
An old man's voice. And Jane is a young woman at this point.
Yes. And physically, Jane later reports that she felt her chin trembling. Not like she was cold, but trembling like an old person's chin might tremor.
That is so visceral. What is actually happening here? Is this just acting, or is Seth doing something to her biology?
Seth explains it in very technical terms. He says this is the transposition of an old nervous system pattern upon Ruburt's.
Whoa. Unpack that. Transposition of a nervous system.
He is effectively overlaying the memory of a completely different nervous system onto Jane's biology. He says it's the memory of another nervous system that here begins to gain prominence.
So he is not just talking through her. He is physically restructuring her nervous response to match a previous incarnation.
That seems to be the exact implication. He is booting up an old operating system on new hardware, and he says it is difficult, it is exhausting. But he makes a startling prediction. He says that if this method were perfected, it could result in actual changes in the physical face to resemble the entity.
Wait, like shape-shifting?
In a sense, the idea is that the cellular memory, or the consciousness holding the blueprint, is so strong that the plastic physical features of the medium would start to mold to match the original owner of that nervous system.
That is terrifying and fascinating at the same time. It suggests that our physical form is much more malleable than we think.
Seth admits it is a massive strain. He says initially all of our energy would be used, however, in this manner, to make the transposition. So they can't do much talking or teaching in this state because all the power is going into just being that old man.
It sounds like a party trick, but a really dangerous high-level one. Why would they even do this? Just show off.
To prove a point about the nature of the self,
Hmm.
to demonstrate that the physical body isn't a fixed cage. It is a malleable expression of consciousness. If you change the consciousness, the software, you change the nervous system, the hardware.
Cellular memory. It suggests that our memories aren't just in our brains. They are capable of being imprinted and replayed physically. It connects to the idea of reincarnation, but on a biological level.
Exactly. If you have lived before, do you carry the pattern of that old nervous system with you? Seth seems to be saying yes, and he can activate it.
Okay, so we have the casual overlay, which is incognito mode, and the old man transposition, which is deep storage mode. Then we get to method 3.
Method 3 is the relief. Jane's head comes up. She puts her glasses back on. The voice returns to the familiar, strong, clear Seth voice we know from the books.
And everyone breathes a sigh of relief.
Seth calls this the compromise method. He says you have the best of both worlds. It allows his personality to come through clearly without the severe physical strain of the transposition, but with more power than the casual overlay.
It is the Goldilocks zone. Not too light, not too heavy. Just right.
And it is interesting that he calls it a compromise. It implies that the standard Seth isn't fully him, and it isn't fully Jane. It is a constructed interface designed for maximum efficiency. It is the user interface for the Seth entity.
This whole session is just layers upon layers of reality. And through it all, Seth keeps this sense of humor. We mentioned the cat, but there was another moment, the merry-go-round.
Yes, after putting Jane through these 3 intense states, Seth jokes. He says, I have put Ruburt on a merry-go-round, and so I shall let you take a break.
He knows he's taking her for a ride.
He does. He mentions he is in a fine mood, and, this is a funny little jab, he tells Rob he is glad to see him taking notes diligently again.
The teacher checking the students' homework.
Always. And he sends a message to Peggy's husband, Bill, who wasn't there. He calls him the Jesuit.
The Jesuit. Was Bill a Jesuit?
No, Bill was a businessman on a trip. But Seth is teasing him, saying he is about his holy way. It is an inside joke, likely referencing Bill's personality or perhaps a past life connection, but it shows that Seth's awareness extends outside the room. He knows where Bill is. He knows what Bill is doing.
It is that non-local consciousness again. So let's look at Rob's role here. We often focus on Seth and Jane, but Rob, Joseph, is the anchor in all this.
Rob is the scientist in the lab. His notes for this session are meticulous. He tracks the time. He tracks the eye movements. He notes the recovery time. He mentions that after the old man experiment, Jane was deeply out and had trouble coming back.
She was really gone.
She was. And when she did come back, she validated the experience from the inside. She told Rob that even though he couldn't see the chin trembling clearly, she felt it. She knew the voice was muffled. She felt the difference between the lilting voice and the old man voice.
That internal validation is crucial. It wasn't just Rob observing it. She was experiencing the physiological shift. It creates a complete picture. You have the external observation from Rob, the internal experience from Jane, and the explanation of the mechanic from Seth.
It creates a triangulation of the event. It is not just a story. It is data.
So bringing this all together, we started with a rejected book and ended up with a shape-shifting medium, a standard night at the Roberts apartment, apparently. But there is a through line here. It is about the fluidity of the self.
That is the synthesis. Look at what we covered. 1, the creative self. Jane had to reconcile her intellect and her intuition to unlock her energy. She had to stop being 2 people and become one integrated person.
Right.
2, the perception of self. Seth sees us not as fixed bodies, but as flowing electromagnetic patterns of history.
And 3, the physical self. The body can host different nervous system patterns. It can be Jane, it can be the old man, it can be the casual Seth.
So the self isn't a noun, it is a verb. It is something we do, not just something we are. We are a process. And we are far more flexible and multidimensional than we give ourselves credit for. We get stuck thinking, I am this body, I am this job, I am this failure. But Seth is saying, no, you are an essence that can rewrite its own code, heal its own body, and even invite other perspectives in.
It empowers you. If you are feeling stuck like Jane was with her rejected book, it is just a signal that your parts aren't working together. It is not a dead end. It is a recalibration.
And that failure might be the exact thing you need to force the integration that leads to your real work. As Seth said, the new book marked the beginning of Rupert's real work.
I love that. So to you, our listener, do not stop here. This is just one session, session 395 out of hundreds. The depth of the Seth material is vast. It is an ocean.
Absolutely. If this piqued your interest, you need to go to the source. Read the books. Visit the New Awareness Network. Their website is sethcenter.com. Specifically, look for the early sessions. That's where you find these raw, experimental moments that sometimes get smoothed over in the later, polished books.
sethcenter.com/, the early sessions. Go there, support the preservation of this material. It is deeply important stuff.
And remember, knowledge is best when applied. Don't just marvel at the old man voice. Ask yourself, what old patterns are you carrying around? And can you integrate your own intellect and intuition to release that stuck energy?
That is the real challenge. And here is one final thought to leave you with, something to mull over while you stare into the embers of our metaphorical campfire.
Lay it on us.
Seth told us he sees us primarily as electromagnetic patterns, and that viewing our physical bodies is like looking through binoculars. It is a secondhand experience for him. He is the ghost looking at the solid world. But if our true nature is also electromagnetic, if we are just like him, but currently focused in 3D, then are we haunting him just as much as he is haunting us?
That is a question that could keep you up at night. Are we the ghosts in Seth's machine?
We will let you decide. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a pleasure.
See you in the next reality.